Did you know how Aristotle's manuscripts were obtained? In 80 BC, during the Roman invasions of Asia Minor, some soldiers found the manuscripts in a well and took them to Sulla, their general. They were sent to Rome and quickly copied. Thanks to this we know them today. Did you know that the bone of a giant was found? In 1887, 4 gold prospectors from Nevada found a bone that looked like a human. They sent it to be studied and scientists confirmed that it was a human tibia. The surprising thing is that it measured 99 centimeters, which would correspond to a person of 3.70 meters tall. Did you know who was the nobleman who spent the longest time bedridden? King Charles XII of Sweden remained 17 months in bed because of the depression that the defeat of the Battle of Pultowa caused him. However, this record was surpassed by the French Raoul Duval, who hated everyone enough to not get out of bed in 18 years. Did you know how many women King Solomon was with? According to ancient texts, King Solomon had a harem of 100 women, 700 wives and 300 concubines, and also starred in some romances with people like the legendary Queen of Sheba. Did you know who was the most important bearded woman in history? The Neapolitan Magdalena Ventura, known for having been a model of the painter José Ribera el Españolito, at the age of 37 saw how she grew a bushy beard and mustache, something that did not prevent her from remarrying and having more children. Did you know what was the first advertisement in history? The first advertisement dates back to 3000 BC. It is a poster found in the ruins of Thebes in Egypt, where a gold coin is offered to whoever captures and returns a runaway slave to his master. Did you know what was the oldest surviving tool? It is a tool called dalu. It is a kind of hydraulic pump, and it was used by the Sumerians 3,500 years ago. Did you know what was the prophecy of the first landing on the moon? In 1954, the novel writer Lester Del Rey wrote a novel that began with the sentence, "The first spacecraft landed on the moon and Commander Armstrong got out of it." 15 years later, Neil Armstrong became the first person to set foot on the moon. Did you know what was the punishment for selling bad beer in Babylon? In the Code of Hammurabi, which governed the laws in Babylon in the year 1700 BC, it is indicated that the sale of beer in bad condition was punishable by death. Did you know what happened to Lord Byron's body? When Lord Byron passed away in 1824, his heart and lungs were buried in Greece, while his body was sent to England, where he was not allowed to be buried in Westminster Abbey due to his many scandals during his lifetime. Did you know how weird the author of Gulliver's Travels was? The Irishman Jonathan Swift was bitter and misanthropic. On his birthday he wore black and refused any food. He died crazed at the age of 68. Did you know what the food was at the highest altitude on Earth? An Australian mountaineering club reached the top of the 6,800-meter Mount Huascarán in Peru, carrying a table, chairs, plates of food and wine, and ate at the summit, the formal meal held at the highest altitude. Did you know why a band had to perform the English national anthem 16 times in a row? They are at the station in Brandenburg, Germany, waiting for King Edward VII to get out of the train. However, the king was so delayed because he could not put on the German martial uniform that he was supposed to wear. Did you know what was the disgusting method by which a Roman general went down in history? Lucius Licinius Lucullus went down in history for having made popular the method of vomiting during banquets, in order to prolong the duration of the extravagant feasts. Did you know that there was a spy who dressed up as a baby? According to the chronicles of the time, the French spy Richebourg, who worked during the French Revolution, measured only 58 centimeters, which is why he used to infiltrate enemy lines disguised as a baby. Did you know who holds the record for standing still at the same point? It was about the Hindu fakir Mastram Bapu, who remained motionless in a ditch in the Inca village of Chitara for 22 years, from 1960 to 1982. Did you know how John Wayne spent as an actor? By then known as Marion Morrison, he worked as a carpenter at the Fox Studios. One day in 1928, while carrying a piece of furniture, director Raoul Walsh saw in him a peculiar way of walking and moving. Did you know which plant produces seeds every 120 years? According to Chinese accounts, the specimen of Philostachys bambusoides, which is a type of bamboo, flowered for the first time in 999 BC. Since then all these plants produce seeds simultaneously, wherever they are, in a cycle of 120 years. Did you know what the erroneous prediction of the invention of cinema was? After inventing cinema, Louis Lumière, one of the Lumière brothers, said, "My invention may be enjoyed as a scientific curiosity, but commercially it is not the slightest interest." Did you know the early age at which the Scottish royal Mary Stuart was crowned? She was proclaimed Queen of Scotland in 1542, when she was only 6 days old, since her father James V died around the same time of her birth. Her formal coronation was when she was 9 years old. Did you know where all the palm trees in Spain come from according to legend? In the year 756, the Caliph Abderrahman I planted with his hands a date palm in the garden of his palace in Córdoba, as a tribute to Arabia. According to legend, all the palm trees in Spain come from there. Did you know in what curious way Pope Clement died? Clement VII died in 1533 after the ingestion of an extremely poisonous mushroom. It was the Phalloid amanita. Did you know who was the stingiest billionaire in history? Billionaire Paul Getty reportedly had a coin-operated telephone installed in his home, trying to limit his household's phone bills. Did you know that terrible law was in force in England until the 20th century? Until the beginning of the 20th century, a law was in force in England that allowed husbands to beat their wives as long as it was not with a rod wider than the husband's thumb. Did you know what mistake was made in a museum with a painting by Georgia O'Keeffe? Georgia O'Keeffe's 1928 oil painting Oriental Poppies, which is on display at the University of Minnesota Museum, hung vertically for 30 years when it was actually painted horizontally. Did you know who was the first to import a bathtub to the United States? There are records that the first person to import a bathtub to the United States was Benjamin Franklin, in the year 1783. In fact, he often used it while he read his correspondence. Did you know what was the lethal irony of the novelist Arnold Bennett? Arnold Bennett, trying to prove to the people of Paris that the water they drank was not to blame for the typhus epidemic that was ravaging the city, publicly drank a glass of that water. He died of typhus a few days later. Did you know that Bach spoke with double voice for a week? In 1700, when the composer Johann Sebastian Bach was 15 years old, coinciding with his voice change, he sang and spoke in octaves, that is, with double voice. This rare phenomenon is called diplophony. Did you know how Alexander the Great is said to have died? According to the chronicles, it is said that he died in Babylon as a result of a fever contracted during an orgy that lasted 2 days. His corpse was taken to his native country, Macedonia, preserved in honey to prevent decomposition. Did you know that in the 17th century, the so-called Emu War took place in Australia in 1932? If you like historical curiosities, don't forget to subscribe because we upload one every day. A group of World War I veterans were sent to eliminate emu pests that were wreaking havoc on farms. Despite carrying firearms, the emus proved to be very elusive, and the operation was a comical failure, as the emus were fast and agile, and the veterans had difficulty hunting them down. The Emu War is remembered as one of the most curious events in military history.